Sophia and David Evans were the epitome of success. Both held high-powered jobs in the corporate world. Sophia was a renowned marketing executive, while David had recently been promoted to CFO of a prestigious financial firm. Their careers had been their life's work, and over the years, they had climbed their way to the top, earning a reputation as one of the most successful power couples in the city. They lived in a sleek, modern mansion on the outskirts of town, the kind of home most people could only dream of. Every inch of their life was meticulously planned, from the art on the walls to the schedules on their phones. They drove luxury cars, wore tailored suits, and entertained the city's elite at lavish dinner parties. But beneath the surface of their glamorous life, there were cracks beginning to show. Sophia and David had two young children, Emma, who was 8, and Lucas, who was 5. In the flurry of conference calls, board meetings, and business trips, the children were often left in the care of a rotating door of nannies. Sophia and David loved their kids dearly, but they had convinced themselves that their work was for the benefit of their family, that the money they made and the life they were building would provide Emma and Lucas with everything they could ever need. What they didn't realize was that the one thing their children truly needed was something no amount of money could buy: time with their parents. The current nanny, Mrs. Clark, was a kind woman in her 50s who had been with the family for over a year. She was attentive and patient, always making sure the children were well fed, well rested, and entertained. But no matter how much she tried, she couldn't fill the void that Sophia and David's absence created. Emma, who used to talk about her day with a sense of excitement, had grown quieter, retreating into her own world of books and imaginary friends. Lucas, once an energetic and bubbly boy, had started throwing tantrums over the smallest things. One night, after yet another missed bedtime, Emma sat on her bed, hugging her stuffed rabbit tightly. She looked up at Mrs. Clark with sad eyes. "Why don't Mommy and Daddy ever talk me in anymore?" Mrs. Clark smiled softly, though her heart ached for the little girl. "They are working hard, darling. They love you very much. But they are always working," Emma whispered. "It feels like they are never here." The next morning, while Mrs. Clark prepared breakfast, Sophia rushed out of the house, talking on her phone, and David left soon after, without so much as a goodbye to the kids. Emma sat quietly at the table, pushing her cereal around with her spoon. Lucas was unusually quiet too, staring at his untouched pancakes. That night, Sophia and David came home late again, both exhausted from a long day. David glanced at his phone as he walked in, still responding to emails, while Sophia dropped her briefcase by the door and collapsed on the couch. "We have to prep for that meeting tomorrow," David muttered, still not looking up. Sophia sighed, rubbing her temples. "I know. I need to review the numbers again." Neither of them noticed that Emma and Lucas had sneaked out of their rooms, standing at the top of the stairs, watching their parents from the shadows. Emma reached for her brother's hand and squeezed it. "They don't care about us anymore," Lucas whispered, his voice trembling. "They're just busy," Emma replied, though her own voice lacked conviction. As the weeks passed, the distance between the parents and their children grew wider. Sophia and David continued to focus on their careers, throwing themselves deeper into their work to chase the next promotion, the next deal, the next success. They didn't see how Emma began to withdraw further, how her grades were slipping, or how Lucas had become increasingly moody, lashing out at Mrs. Clark and even refusing to go to school some days. One Friday afternoon, the school counselor called Sophia while she was in the middle of a high-stakes meeting. She let the call go to voicemail, but the message was alarming enough to get her attention. Emma had been caught crying in class, and when asked what was wrong, she had simply said, "My parents are never home." Sophia stared at her phone in shock. How had she not noticed her daughter was struggling? How had she let things get this far? That evening, Sophia and David sat down at the dining table, both unusually quiet as they processed the news. It was the first time in months that they were having dinner together without being distracted by work. "We've been failing them, haven't we?" Sophia finally said, her voice cracking. David, usually stoic and composed, nodded slowly. "We've been so caught up in our careers that we haven't been there for them," he replied. "We thought we were doing the right thing, working hard for their future, but we've lost sight of what really matters." The next morning, instead of rushing out to work, Sophia and David decided to spend the day with Emma and Lucas. When the kids woke up, they were surprised to find their parents in the kitchen, making pancakes together, laughing and talking like they used to. Lucas rubbed his eyes, still half asleep, and tugged on Emma's sleeve. "Are they really here? Or am I dreaming?" Emma smiled, though there was a glimmer of doubt in her eyes. "I think they are really here." Throughout the day, Sophia and David played board games with the kids, took them to the park, and even helped them with their homework. At first, Emma and Lucas were hesitant, unsure if this sudden attention would last. But by the evening, when their parents tucked them into bed and kissed them goodnight, they began to believe that maybe things were changing for the better. In the weeks that followed, Sophia and David made a conscious effort to be more present. They set boundaries at work, cutting back on late nights and weekend meetings. They rearranged their schedules so they could be home for dinner and help with homework. Most importantly, they made time to listen to Emma and Lucas, to really be there for them, not just physically, but emotionally as well. It wasn't easy. Their careers demanded constant attention, and sometimes it felt like they were swimming against the tide. But slowly, they found a balance. They realized that true success wasn't measured by titles or paychecks, but by the moments they spent with the people they loved. One night, as Sophia sat in the living room, watching David play a board game with Lucas, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she wasn't thinking about the next big project or the next business deal. She was thinking about how lucky she was to have a family, and how important it was to never take them for granted again. In the end, Sophia and David learned the hard way that no amount of success was worth losing their connection with their children. And as they looked into Emma and Lucas's smiling faces, they knew they had made the right choice.